please make on mute when you're not talking. Welcome to Tan Sri Datuk Sri Panglima Dr. Abdul Rahman Arshad Debate Challenge Trophy for Kedah State Level of the year 2022. The motion for today is this house believes that video games could be detrimental to children. Acting as the government team for this debate is the team from Padang Terap district, with Ms. Shafia as the first speaker, Ms. Nur Fariza as the second speaker, and Ms. Nur Ain Najibah as the third speaker. And the reply speech will be delivered by Ms. Ain Shafia. While acting as the opposition team for this debate is the team from Pendang district, with Mr. Edwin Chen as the first speaker, Ms. Camelia as the second speaker, Ms. Auni Batrisha as the third speaker, and the reply speech will be delivered by Ms. Camelia. There are three educators who will educate this competition. They are Mr. Suresh as the chief judge, and Ms. Nora Shikin. Last but not least, Ms. Kiranjit Kaur. Now, I would like to for this debate. For substantive speech, each debater is given 8 minutes to deliver his or her speech. The timekeeper will ring after the first minute to show that point of information can be delivered. The timekeeper will then ring the bell once again at the end of the 7th minute to show that the time for POI is over. At the end of the 8th minute, the bell will be rung twice to indicate that the time allocated is over. A maximum time of 3 minutes will be given to both teams to prepare for reply speech. The timekeeper will ring the bell once to show the start of the preparation time, and the bell will be rung twice after 3 minutes to show that the time to prepare for the reply speech has ended. For reply speech, the timekeeper will ring the bell once again at the 3rd minute to signal that the debater has 1 minute left. At the end of the 4th minute, the bell will be rung twice to signal the end of the debate. Now, we shall begin our debate today. To open the case from the government team, please welcome Ms. Ani Shafia as the speaker.
Hello everyone, am I audible? All right. A very good day, I bid to the speakers. A very good day, I bid to the speakers, my dear opponents and members of the House. The motion for today is, this House believe that video games could be detrimental to children. We, the government team, strongly and definitely agree with this motion. We believe that video games could be detrimental to children as it damagingly alters children's development in the future. From this motion, we understand that video games are games played by electronically manipulating images produced by a computer program on a monitor or other display, could be detrimental as able or having the potential to cause harm. And children, as a people below the age of puberty and below the legal age, which in Malaysia is below 18, and no, still under parent supervision. As we all know, the COVID-19 outbreak has made a significant impact on young people's everyday life. From a public health perspective, children and adolescents have so far been relatively protected from severe symptoms from the virus infections due to the advancements of technology. Now, screen-based activities are an integral part of the young generation's life, especially children. However, strong concerns are raised regarding the consequences of the intrusive disease suppressive measures due to prolonged use of the gadgets that have caused substantial changes in the daily life of youth. With the current states of the world, especially heightened with the increasing prices and inflations of everyday goods, parents of this age have to work 24/7 to fulfill families' needs and also necessities. Thus, the alternative to being separated from their children is by giving their kids a phone, computer, or other gadgets. It's the parents' best choice at the moment to control their children. However, the effects of this necessary evil, the necessary neglect, have to be addressed for the futures of all children, because not only does it affect the development in the early stages of their childhood, but it also impacts the extent of their adulthood. Thus, video games damagingly alters children's development in the future. Members of the House, let me continue with our team's first point, which is that video games will lead to addiction. Science that indicate video games addictions occurs in 6 to 15% of all gamers, according to the Universities of New Mexico. The main reasons for the children's attraction to these games include being easily accessible when the authorities and families do not have a proper plan for their children's leisure time, and there are not many options for their entertainment. So how does addictions occur in video games? Standard video games are generally designed by to be played by a single player and involve a clear goal or a mission, such as rescuing a princess.
Your eye?
Yes?
Since the government saying that video games could be detrimental to children, but why the government did not ban the video game instead?
I'm sorry, your eye is not clear.
Since the government saying that video games could be detrimental to children, but why the government did not ban the video game instead?
I'm sorry, but your eyes is out of motion. Thank you. So the addictions in these games is often related to completing that mission or beating a high score or a preset standard. Yes?
Don't you think that actually video games cause addiction because the children themselves are spending too much time in front of their gadgets that cause addiction? Thank you.
Like I just mentioned that usually the parents are too busy with daily life and they have no other option just let their children to play games. So that's why the children being addicted to the game, because they find that they can find happiness through the uses of when they play the video games. All right. So now, the other types of video games addiction is associated with online multiplayer games. These games are played online with other people and are especially addictive because they generally have no ending. Additionally, with the popularizations of games, games are adopting the ability to buy in-app purchases such as colorful and limited skins and also characters. This feature is prevalent in many multiplayer games that are played by many children across the world, including PUBG, Free Fire, Mobile Legends, FIFA, and Fortnite. Video game designers, like anyone else trying to make a profit, are always looking for ways to get more people playing their games, and evidently it's working. For example, a recent case happened in January 2022 where a father in Singapore was charged with 20,000 Singapore dollars. I repeat, 20,000 Singapore dollars on his credit card bill after a daughter's in-game spending spree on Genshin Impact. Without his knowledge, the teen had linked her unlimited e-wallet for transportation to a mobile game called Genshin Impact and gone on a 6-week spending spree from August to October on in-game purchases called the gacha system to upgrade her avatar. This shows that even microtransactions can become a medium for retail therapy. Pages like this are the prime reason why video games are so addictive and can lead to many negative impacts on the children's mind. Children's prime years of development start at the age of 5 until 10. When they are exposed to this such an early age, they become antisocial and tend to isolate themselves, avoiding sleeping or eating proper meals in order to continue gaming, which can also eventually lead them to a sleep disorder or diet-related health issues. When children begin to think that video games platforms are the places for them where they are most accepted, it actually leads them becoming more dependent on it. Constant attention to devices comes at the cost of other activities that are ultimately more valuable and developmentally important, leading to poor academic performance and also distractions toward their educations. The result of this is the deterioration of the children's quality of life, which leads to depressions. And once you're stuck in this cycle, it can be hard to break out of it. Thus, we've shown that, no thank you, we have shown you that video games can mutate into avoidance and escapism, causing them to get stuck in life and feel hopelessness for the future. The effects of computer games on the psychological health of people, the severity, and also the significance that it depends on the factors such as the level of destructiveness of the game and the ability to inhibit their desires and motivation. So, it's obvious that if the children spend all the time out of school playing computer games and neglect other activities which may be useful from the social viewpoint or for the thinking and development, you view this end absolutely unfavorable. Thus, we urge the House to pass this motion as video games damagingly alters children's development in the future. With that, we've never been prouder to propose.
Thank you to the first speaker of the government. To start the case from the opposition team, please welcome the first speaker of the opposition team, Mr. Edwin Chan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A very good morning to the wise and honorable educators, precise timekeepers, fellow members of the opposition and members of the government. We are here today to argue on the motion as proposed by the government, where they believe that video games could be detrimental to children. However, we the opposition team believe that their motion is inaccurate and should be overruled, as we find that they have presented a misguided case. We the opposition find that the government's definition on the keywords today is acceptable. However, we find that the case line made by the government is still flawed and inaccurate, and we still prove so in our arguments. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue further, allow me to review on what the first speaker of the government had said earlier. She claimed that the mental health of the video game is not just caused by the video game itself, it's also caused by the other problem too. Ladies and gentlemen, with the opposition strongly believe that video games could never be detrimental to children. Because with proper usage, video games cannot be detrimental even to children. In fact, children can benefit from video games. Thus, to say that it's dangerous, damaging, and harmful is not accurate. I, as the first speaker of the opposition team, will present our first arguments and later on deliver our reply speech. Meanwhile, my second speaker will review the arguments made by the second and first speakers of the government team and bring forward two more arguments to solidify our stand. Whereas my third speaker will rebut the points given by all the speakers on the government team. Honorable judges and members of the floor, we the opposition team believe that the government is at the wrong end of the road. They have put a very dangerous word, detrimental, to an inhuman object which they claim could pose a danger to children. It is as if we are still arguing if at the old age, drugs are bad for you. My dear government.
POI, please.
Drugs, yes, accepted.
Don't you think that video games is a platform that enables these bad things to happen?
Thank you for your questions. I will come back to you later. Now, allow me to continue my words, please. Thank you. My dear government, drugs are not bad for us. It is the overuse of drugs that is dangerous, or in this case, the overuse and spending too much time playing games that makes it detrimental to children, not the video games itself. That is why I come to our first arguments that video games are not detrimental to children, but it is spending too much time in front of the gadgets and the lack of parental or guardian supervisions. When children under the legal age of 18 is spending like 15 hours a day gaming, it is not the video games nor the content designers and creators are at fault. When this happens, we cannot look at video games and point fingers at it. We should be looking at the responsible adults around them. Under the excuses of having a busy work of life, they neglect and could not care less about what their children are doing and how many hours the children spend in front of the computers or smartphones. That is what is detrimental and causing all these problems to children, not the video games. In 1989, as indicated in the Declarations of the Rights of the Child under United Nations, under Article 49, the child, by reasons of his physical and mental immaturity, needs special safeguards and care, including appropriate legal protection before as well as after birth. This is what is stated under the Acts of Human Rights of a Child. Thus, we, the opposition team, believe that as long as the child is protected and continuously supervised when they play games, then any misuse of video games will be prevented. Your questions by the questions by the government is going to be answered in my arguments too. So, according to WHO, World Health Organization, on January 10, 2019, The entertainment software rating What.com stated that 42% of interactive games or video games are rated E, which is for everyone, whereas only 19% are rated E+, which means everyone above 10 years old. 30% are rated T for teenagers, and a mere numbers of 9% of the available games online for those above 17. Although the government claims that many video games are unsuitable for children, the issue whether it is suitable or not depends on whether these children are playing games that suit their age. If children are exposed to gruesome and blood-shooting games,
QR, please.
then, yes, accepted.
Okay, don't you think that even though there is age ratings, but PUBG in Malaysia, even 10-year-olds are playing it, even though it's suitable for 13 ages and up. What do you think about this?
I will come back to you later. Allow me to continue my words, please. Although the government claims that many video games are unsuitable for children, the issue whether it is suitable or not depends on whether these children are playing games that suited their age. If children are exposed to gruesome and blood-shooting games, then they are obviously playing the wrong games. Does that mean that these games are at fault? Sorry, rejected. I have to finish my words first. Thank you. You're always playing the wrong games. Does that mean that these games are at fault? No, they are not. Certain games are rated accordingly due to age aspirations. Thus, here is where parental and guardians control must come in. At this point, they must play the roles of being the adults and responsible of people for these children. Set a time limit for children to play games, or put a limit how much a child spends on games, or make rules to prevent overusing. Parents must control and prevent misuse of video games among their children before they develop any kinds of gaming addictions. Current usage is the only solutions to all these related online gaming problems. Ladies and gentlemen, it is much more productive to provide and suggest solutions to all these problems occurring to children than simply finding faults and pointing fingers. These are what the government should be focusing on. With this, the oppositions would again reaffirm our case that we do not believe that video games could be detrimental to children, as children will only eat what is served to them. And parents and legal guardians are the ones with the responsibility to make sure that children do not misuse these video games. With that, I rest my case. Thank you.
Okay, to continue our debate today, I would like to invite the second speaker of the government team, Ms. Nur Fariza.
Testing mic, stack here. All right. A very good day, Abid, to the speaker, dear opponents and members of the House. The motion for today is this House believes that video games could be detrimental to children. We, as the government team, strongly and totally agree with this motion, as we believe that video games could be detrimental to children as it damagingly alters children's development in the future. As the second speaker of the government team, we
before I proceed with our team's second and third arguments, I would like to refute the first point of the opposition team. Firstly, they asked us why we don't ban video games. Clearly, ladies and gentlemen, it's out of the motion as we are discussing about the detrimentality of video games. We are not discussing about the policy of debate. Hence, it's clearly shown that the opposition team doesn't understand the motion. Next, they mentioned about they can gain the benefits from the video games, and they say that it's not the video games cause itself, but you also mentioned about video games should be under parental control. When you believe that video games need parental control, does it seem that you are supporting us as video games could be detrimental to children? So, ladies and gentlemen, I've already
Pure eye, please.
point was totally be damaged. No, thank you. Members of the audience house, let me continue our team's second argument to support our case line, which is that video games enable emotional suppression. Suppression begins with gaming, replacing social activities that are important to maintain one's social connectivity with significant others, such as family and friends. Not surprisingly, when more time is allocated to the internet and video games, time spent socializing with family, friends, and other people and performing other social activities decreases. With current games that are popular among children, such as Battle Royals, open world games, and story-driven games, 1 hour is not enough for them and they will not feel satisfied. Usually, the average playing time of these games are 2 to 4 hours minimum. The more the children play video games, the more they lose contact with their real-life friends, which can in turn lead to experiencing more social anxiety. As the children start playing video games more and more, they begin to neglect other aspects of their lives, even their emotions. We have already told you that parents allowing children to play video games is a form of neglect. This neglect causes children to deal with their emotions unhealthily, forming habits of suppressing their emotions and avoiding fully experiencing or responding to them. Suppressed feelings may be channeled or redirected into many activities, or in today's case, video games. Emotional suppression begins in childhood because much of what children learn about behavior and communication comes from the primary caregivers. But these principal steps get completely skipped due to the video games. Instead of staying in a state of recognizing their sadness, disappointment, or anger, they redirect their emotions into games which may worsen their moods or completely numb them to it. With no parent able to validate their emotions, trolls and strangers in online games are ones to aggravate them further. Our proof of this is in our society. For men, the only acceptable emotion that they can express is anger, which is prevalent in multiplayer games, leading to the increasing rise of incels and toxic masculinity. Emotional development at an early stage of life allows for self-reflection and healthy communication. However, video games cause this part of development in children to be stunted and sometimes even regress into unhealthy mindset. Ladies,
Pure eye.
Yes, please.
You just said that video games cause social anxiety, but we, the opposition, do believe there is many reasons other than video games could cause social anxiety. Thank you.
I'm sorry, your eye is not really clear.
Should I repeat it again?
I guess it will be wasting my time, so I guess I should proceed with my speech. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, our third point is that video games expose children to all negative influences. In the world of gaming, especially multiplayer games, acts such as sexual harassment, hate speech, threats of violence, spamming, blaming, and etc. occurs often, and such behaviors are normalized. Perpetrators of such behavior tend to be younger, male, and high in emotional reactivity and impulsivity. These behaviors are fueled by the anonymity and by players seeing them as widespread and acceptable behaviors, which might help explain why toxicity is somewhat contagious. Not only that, children exposed to profanity in video games think that such language is normal, which may reduce their inhibitions about using profanity themselves. And children who use profanity are more likely to make them more aggressive towards others. Profanity is kind of like stepping stone. You don't go to a movie, hear a bad word, and then go and shoot somebody. But when you go here and then try profanity out for themselves, it can start a downward slide towards more aggressive behavior, which will lead them to a worse childhood environment. This also could bring an effect of cyberbullying. For example, a third of 5 to 10 years old have been the victims of cyberbullying. Another example
QI?
of negative exposure, yes please.
That's why we must not blame the video games, but blame the people behind it. Thank you.
If you are saying so, it means that you are still supporting us because video games being detrimental to our society. Okay, moving on. Another example of negative exposure by video games is that children will be easily exposed to pedophiles. Recently, in April 2021, BBC reported that a pedophile had groomed an 11-year-old boy through online games. He encouraged the boy to make a video of himself carrying out sexual activities on 20 occasions and also gave the boy cryptocurrency to pay for the games. Plus, there is data that shows since the pandemic began, online sexual abuse and exploitation of children has risen globally in certain countries up to 400%. Even worse is that in many online games, when you are actually gaming and talking live, none of that is recorded. For predators, this is actually an insurance policy that whatever they are doing, whatever they are saying, won't be used against them in court. The effects of this grooming, especially without the ability to bring it out in court, will definitely lead to trauma amongst children. Members of the House, in conclusion, video games are not a suitable place for the children to actually take it as their playground. This is because, from what I've stated, that it enables emotional suppression and gives bad exposure to those kids who are still growing. That is why we, as the government team, strongly stands for video games could be detrimental to children as it amazingly alters children's development in the future. With that, I thank you.
Thank you to the first, to the second speaker of the government team. The debate will continue with the speech from the second speaker of the opposition team. Please welcome Ms. Camelia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, honorable educators, timekeepers, and the wise but misguided government team and members of the House. Before I, as a second speaker, move on with 2 more points, allow me to rebut on what have been said by speakers of the government. The second speaker of the government claims that video game could cause social anxiety, but I would like to point out that how unprofessional the second speaker of the government could be when she just accepted my PI, but then he rejected by saying that's just wasting my time. How unprofessional it could be. But anyway, it's accurate about what you just said. Social anxiety. We, the opposition, do believe that social anxiety can come from any other ways than video games. Why you keep blaming the video games itself? Ladies and gentlemen, the first speaker of the government stated that addiction, video games cause addiction among children because parents are busy to monitor children, so the children feel free to play games and cause addiction. My dear government, no matter how busy the parents are, our today's motion is obviously mentioned about children, which is in Malaysia, as you just mentioned. In Malaysia, it's below 18, and it's obviously under parents' responsibilities. Honorable educators, we, the opposition, believe that video games could not be detrimental to children because video games benefit rather than harm children. In fact, video games improve children's creativity. And in our second argument, I shall prove this. Members of the House, Creativity is something that comes naturally to everyone. Adults might prefer a more conventional way to such as reading, drawing, or designing Lego sets to develop their creativity during childhood. If you're not an artist, musician, or someone in an artsy field, you might wonder why creativity is important. Well, thinking creatively opens up the possibilities. Playing games literally is a powerful way of facilitating creative thinking. July 10.
POI, please.
Yes, Miss. Go on with your question.
Yeah. Don't you think, okay, what are the examples of these creative games that you mentioned about?
Oh, thank you for the POI. Well, I will answer because your questions is related in my argument. Playing games really is a powerful way of facilitating creative thinking. July 10, 2019, www.technology.inquirer.com, New American research has found that video games such as Minecraft may help increase creativity when players are given the freedom to play as they want with no instructions. Minecraft, a virtual Lego style game where you can build anything that you can imagine. I would like to point out, since it released in 2011, Minecraft has amassed 141 million active players worldwide. Imagine how many players are there. Well, one of the groups was asked to play as a wish for 40 minutes. The other group received the instruction to play as creatively as possible. Studies in MSU Today reports that any game that arouses your imagination will also help to boost your creativity. As an example, video games like Minecraft, World of Warcraft, and Stardew Valley also encourage players to think and act in creative ways. When children are used to... Yes, accepted.
All right. You said that in games like Minecraft, you can create anything given a freedom. But the things that they create are actually not beneficial and cannot be implemented in the real life. What do you say about that?
Okay, thank you for your POI. How can you say that it's not that benefits the children? Well, I just mentioned they could provide creative skills to children. When children are back to my argument. When children are used to approach unfamiliar challenges and trained to overcome it, we, the opposition, find that when a child is trained, will approach unfamiliar challenges and how to overcome it. Honorable educators, we, the opposition, believe that video games could not be detrimental to children because video games benefit rather than harm. This will be proven in our third argument, where we find that video games are very beneficial to children cognitive skills. When in video games, children develop and improve their cognitive flexibility. According to the American Psychological Association, APA, in article dated 2013, shooting games such as PUBG, Free Fire, Roblox, and etc. are meant for children 12 and above. When children at the age of 12 and above now have the cognitive ability to challenge their brain. As mentioned earlier by my teammate, games are rated to suit children's age. With suitable games, children at the age of 10 and below develops their cognitive flexibility through video games. What is cognitive or mental flexibility? It is the ability to shift a course of thought or action according to the changing demands of a situation. In other words, children gain skills where they can use their brains to switch between different tasks and adapt to changes very quickly. Now you may be wondering, what's the big deal? Here's the big deal, my dear government. Having greater cognitive flexibility guarantees advantages in real life because cognitive flexibility is the most useful part of our brain as it affects the way we understand things around us. It affects the way we adapt to changes and how we respond to situations. While some people naturally have more cognitive flexibility, but for children, cognitive flexibility can improve with practice. As people once said. Yes, accepted.
It means that when you are playing too much game, it means that you are improving their creativity, right?
Wait. You said
so
that
it will lead to addiction.
I'm sorry. Could you please repeat your question?
You said that it will boost their creativity or something.
Yeah.
But the thing is, to gain that creativity, you don't play that game within just 1 hour. It will cause to addiction where you play it by 2 to 4 hours in minimum, like I mentioned before.
Okay, thank you for your POI. As I mentioned earlier, our today motion is obviously stated children, which back to our parents. It's under the parents' responsibilities and it all by choices. problem-solving skills. According to a long-term study published in 2030, when you're playing a game, you immerse yourself in it. The government might say, when you immerse in it, you're spending too much time and lead to addiction. Well, my God, mighty government. And this allows your brain to form new connections and solve problems accurately. In many cases, there's a time pressure which develops speed and decision-making skills. For example, Call of Duty is a war game set in World War II. Futuristic words and the other space. When we mention about war, the first thing that probably comes to our mind is a tense situation. So here's the use of video games. If you get shot by your enemies at certain points in the game, you will get this recovery time. It will change your tactic instead of giving up. Ladies and gentlemen, many video games out there may seem violent to us, but have you ever thought that this is almost the same with how our parents in the younger days play around, just like how our mothers used to pretend play houses, imitating what they see, and how our dads pretend to strategize war scenarios with wooden sticks as guns. The difference is that now we have the technology in video games to make this pretend play more realistic and fun. Let us not deny the same principle just because they don't look the same. Members of the House, I have proven that video games are beneficial to children because video games help develop children's cognitive flexibility as well as problem-solving skills. With this, we, the opposition, firmly believe that video games could not be detrimental to children. With that, thank you.
Thank you to the second speaker of the opposition team. Ladies and gentlemen and honorable educators, let's hear from the third speaker of the government team, Ms. Nur Ain Najibah.
Testing, can everyone hear me? All right,
Clear.
okay. So I'll start in a very good day. I bid to the speaker, our worthy opponents, and members of the House. The motion for today is this House believes that video games could be detrimental to children. As it stands, we, the government team, strongly agree with today's motion. We strongly believe that video games could be detrimental to children as it damagingly alters children's development for the future. So they keep on mentioning, first of all, the opposition's case has been all about how parental control plays a large role in reducing the detrimentality of video games. And they keep on mentioning that it's not video games who are to be blamed. However, the discussion is not whether if video games are the ones to blame. It's about who is at fault and if it actually does harm. And it does. We've mentioned in our points. So first of all, their first POI to our first speaker was that why not ban video games in of itself? But that's not what we're discussing about. Clearly, it shows that the opposition team does not know what we're actually discussing about. And also, so let me move on to their first point, which is that video games and the overuse of it is what is actually bad. They mentioned that it's not the developer's fault. So let me first start off with the fact that parental control is a must thing. This is assuming that parents actually know of the information available about video games. Not every parent is IT savvy, even though they may be using the most currently advanced smartphone. And they also mentioned that there's age ratings. However, even before downloading the game, it does, no thank you. If it does actually tell you the age suitability, most of the times we don't even read it. And the process of installing these games aren't difficult at all. It literally requires one click of the green install button on the App Store and a working internet connection. Also, they keep on mentioning, and they didn't even address about PUBG, and the popular games currently among Malaysian teens or among Malaysian children is PUBG and mostly just shooting games. Games like these are very popular, especially among boys. It's almost seen as a given that they do play it. No, thank you. That they do play it to a certain extent. While we like to believe that parental control does happen, it's not happening to the current extent that the opposition believes that it is. We're not insinuating that parents aren't thinking of the best for their children. But due to video games and technology being seen as a necessity to the modern world, the ignorance is a consequence of that. Yes, what was your POI? No? Okay, then. I'll move on. So,
POI.
yeah, go ahead.
You just mentioned that PUBG, like shooting skills, is something. Okay. My dear government, shooting is not what matters here. What matters here is the strategy they develop in
Okay, I got
children.
this.
Okay,
Alright.
thank you.
But the thing is, yes, it's not the shooting that is the real fault here. The thing is, these games have no ending. We've mentioned this is what makes it addictive. They also mentioned that problematic gaming is not what causes problematic gaming is what causes loneliness and depression and addiction. But we've told you that games are designed to be immersive. Their first point, which is that it's not the developer's fault, but many games currently, even Genshin Impact, have the ability for you to buy in-app purchases. This makes it for children to feel FOMO, fear of missing out, because they want to be seen as impressive. They feel like they have to buy all these skins, which they've never addressed in their points. But this leads to a cycle of constantly buying more and more to seem up to date with the game. Dependency towards video games is the actual problem. They do not even mention that children currently are very dependent on video games. It's also, I wonder how realistic it is to expect that kids, literal children, to keep their gaming habits in check. Expecting that without fail, children can control their tendency to fall into addiction towards video games, or expecting that parents themselves have the actual capability to reverse these symptoms of their addiction is simply impractical. Also, they mentioned that in their second point, which is, go ahead.
It doesn't matter if the parents are not to update or something with our technology in the 21st century, but what we are actually focusing on here is that parents should control, not to understand our technology today in order to control their
How
children.
can you control something that you don't understand? Thank you. Anyway, their second point, which is that it increases creativity, and their point is that it's such as Minecraft, right? However, these games, again, especially in Malaysia, Minecraft is only popular in Western countries most of the times. Plus, Minecraft is not really a game that you can constantly play every day. Yes, you do get into a phase where you do play it for months. But for example, PUBG, all of these are games that are much more appealing to children. So even these games like Minecraft aren't really increasing creativity that much as you would like to think. Also, their third point, which is that you can improve your cognitive skills. However, with games that have puzzles and riddles, there are lots of websites that actually give full-fledged walkthroughs on how to solve it. Why think when someone else can and already has done the work for you? Also, video games are especially appealing to a certain kind of personality. Children who are smart and gifted don't feel challenged at school, and as a result, they get bored quickly, which is why they turn to video games to feel tested. But when we expose when we expose such visually appealing and technology and games to children at such an early age, do you think that their attention can catch their usually in boring environments of learning in a classroom? Over time, they start to rely on video games to feel challenged. But over time, they will get left behind by their other with their other friends, which will make them lose their self-confidence. Even currently, even though video games is very much normalized, it's still also stigmatized. Parents view video games as, if you play it, it's seen as, oh, you're lazy. This actually kills their self-confidence. And this is why video games does do harm to children. Also, for their POI from my second speaker, they mentioned that there are other factors that cause social anxiety. But first of all, this does not mean that video games themselves don't cause social anxiety. We don't see the relevance of this POI. So they keep on mentioning about parental control, but we've showed you that it's just not happening to the standard that they would like you to think. No matter what the opposition side has told you, the benefits they provided the House with has its negativity alongside it. Video games being intertwined with children's development and childhood is a double-edged sword. To complicate things further, the developers of video games themselves are actively trying to create... No, the time is over for you. the developers of video games are actively trying to create products that tap into our addictive tendencies, creating a compulsion loop. The ability to buy in-app purchases, the ability to gamble in these games are exactly why video games are indeed detrimental. If horrible effects can impact an adult's life, imagine what it could do to a developing child. I ask you this, the opposition team. Thus, we urge this House to pass this motion, as video games could be detrimental to children as it damagingly alters children's development in the future. With that, thank you.
Thank you to the third speaker of the government. Let's hear from the third speaker of the opposition team, Ms. Auni Batrisha.
Can you hear me? Thank you, Madam Speaker, honorable adjudicators, timekeepers, member of the government, and a member of the House. Good morning, I bid to everyone. The motion proposed by the government is that video games could be detrimental to children. However, we, the opposition, find this to be not true. The government case line is that video games could be detrimental to children because it damagingly alter the child development in the future. However, we find this not true because with the correct usage, video game can never be detrimental. From video game, children are actually developing their cognitive and leadership skill, creativity, and also cognitive flexibility. And my two teammates have proven this in their argument. And this is why the government case is flawed. Allow me to rebut on what the third speaker said. The third speaker said that it is the parent said that we are saying that it is the parent fault and not the game fault. And this is what making the game damaging. This is not true because it is the even though Malaysia have not implemented the law of the children, parents are still at the responsible to control the child which is still underage. She also mentioned that PUBG have no ending, which caused it to be the addicting. However, it is not true because in 2017, PUBG has restricted access to minors to only 1 hour a day. You also mentioned something about the parents can control, because how can you control something that you don't understand? We, the opposition, find it is wrong because nowadays you can use an app that will limit the time, and once the time is over, it will stop the game. Yes.
Okay. The thing is, how to understand that there is actually apps that actually help parents is already meaning that they actually understand that these things do actually exist. But that's not happening in current society.
I'm sorry, but this is your assumption. This is not true. Nowadays, parents, in some phone, there is already an app that show that you can control your child. How can the parents not looking at this? You also mentioned something about Minecraft is not played every day, and which is actually not helping them in reality. Don't you realize that we also learn a subject just a few hours a day? Does that mean we are not learning from it? It's not, right? We are learning from it. These are also the same thing as Minecraft. You don't have to learn or look at it or play it for hours to learn something from it. Now going to the second speaker of the government. She said that it will cause social anxiety. This is not true because Do you
No,
realize
please.
from my own experience? Yes.
Okay. Actually, our second point was not about social anxiety. We only mentioned it once. Our actual point was emotional suppression. It enables emotional suppression. So get that right. Thank you.
Thank you. But emotional suppression is also linked to social anxiety. Do you realize that introverts will not speak to their friends on the school if they don't have the same interests? This will actually help the introvert by making friends using video games. You can be friends using video games. This is how we make friends in real world, by finding someone with the same interests. Actually help those who have social
Your
anxiety
IPs?
into engaging to people. Yes.
You say that you can find friends through online, but how can you assure that they will be a good friends? How about if they become a fake people, like I've mentioned, that how they want to take advantage of you, such as the pedophile cases?
Thank you for your question. However, I never say something about online friend. On your real life, you also find a friend that is same interest in you in schools. You won't find someone that doesn't have the same interest with you. On to the second speaker, she said something about a parents that letting their children playing video games is actually a form of neglect. Doesn't this is exactly why the parents is at fault? It shows exactly that it is the parent fault for letting their parents play games that is not suitable for their age. And you also mentioned something about a toxic behavior in video games. This is fault because it is exactly as we keep saying, it is fault of the pupil, not the game itself. And last but
Your
not least, the
IPs?
first speaker of the government mentioned that, yes,
You say that it's not video games fault itself, but the video games becoming the platform of the exposure to the negativity.
thank you for your question. It is not a platform to the negativity. Yes, there are some cases, but do you know that if you look at the age rated, there are some game that won't let you to have a comment, which will not let you will not let it become a platform for negativity. And as I keep saying, it is the fault of people. If people doesn't be a bad person and show negativity, then it won't be a harmful part. And as I gonna go earlier, you say it's something about parents giving their child a phone to distract them is the only option from the parents. Just because Malaysia still not have implement the parents' responsibility law, unlike the US, that doesn't mean that parents can get away from responsibilities in monitoring and controlling their children under age from excessive game. You also state about addiction. From my data, it states that the American Psychiatric Association (APA) has classified internet gaming disorder (IGD) as an unverified potential diagnosis, which require further review. A 2017 study in Association of Official Journal also state that there is not enough research right now to confirm definitely that overusing video game is an addiction, according to the APA definition. Wise educators, member of the House, we the opposition believe that the government is misguided in their case and argument. They have not proven their point, and they have failed to convince us with their motion. From the rebuttals made by my college and I today, we believe that their case does not stand. They are only looking at the faults and effect. They are not looking at the solution and read judgment to control and solve the issue at hand. With that, we the opposition believe that video games could never be detrimental to children because video games benefit children, not harming them. With that, we thank you.
We have heard the argument from both teams, and now the debaters are given 3 minutes to prepare their reply speech. Now, to wrap up our debate today, here is the reply speech from the opposition team, which will be delivered by Ms. Camelia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Panel of educators and members of the House. Here I am again before you to deliver my reply speech. In my reply speech, I shall report on the government arguments, provide summary of our arguments on why we feel that video games cannot be detrimental even to children. In fact, children can benefit from video games. Ladies and gentlemen, the third speaker said that how can parents control something that they don't understand? Seems like the third speaker of the government still not understand what I am stating, I've stated earlier. I said that parents should control the children, not the gadgets that children play on video games and something. So I hope that answer your question. Now going to I'm sorry, but I would like to highlight here that this is why education for children, this is why parents, this is the importance of why parents should educate their children since the young age. Now going to the second speaker of the government, she said that they are cases that children use the father's money to purchase avatars using e-wallet. My dear government, it's obviously that parents are so careless. Do you know that in order to buy something online, you should put in a pin that was sent to the owner phone or spot. You don't put the password in 1 minute. It's obviously that parents careless. Now I'm sure that the government might be wondering why I keep blaming the parents. So I would like to highlight again that our motion today is about children, and it's obviously on the responsibilities of parents. Now going to the first speaker of the government, she said that we are it's like we are agreeing with government because we mentioning that it's the fault of the people behind it. My dear government, that's why we said that it's not the video game's fault itself, it's the people behind it. It's on our choice. It's up to our own choices. Ladies and gentlemen, we, the opposition, find that games could not be detrimental because in our first argument, it's not the video games, but the misuse of the video games that's causing all these problems. We also believe that the government is misguided because video games benefits children the most. We find rather than harms, video games provide an interactive tool for fun and creative learning for children. You might be asking why there's still a lot of games that puzzles, so why you have to choose video games as fun learning tool. In our 21st century, we the opposition believe that children are not interested in that type of games anymore. In our third argument, our video games provide a successful financial revenue even for children, and the esports provide a promising future job market for these children. With this, we don't see how video games can be detrimental to children. Ladies and gentlemen, they have put a very dangerous word, detrimental to an inhuman object. Aside from all the misleading arguments made by the government, they have not provided us with any solid evidence to show that video games could be detrimental to children, as we, the opposition, has presented 3 solid arguments to prove that video games are not detrimental to children. A knife at the hand of a cook is the most important tool in their work. But at the hand of inexperienced cook or a novice, a knife could be a dangerous subject. Just because there are cases where people who play games and display negative behaviors, that doesn't mean the same thing will happen to the rest. Whilst educators, we, the opposition, believe that the government is misguided in their case and arguments. They haven't proven the point and failed to convince us on their motion. With that, we, the opposition, believe that video games could not be detrimental because rather than harm benefits, video games benefits children. With that, we, the opposition, thank you.
Thank you to the opposition team. Last but not the least, here is the reply speech from the government team, which will be delivered by Ms. Anshafia.
All right. Hi. So, a very good day I bid to the speakers, my worthy opponents, and members of the House. Ladies and gentlemen, You have heard the arguments put forward by us as well as by the oppositions. So to start off, our case from the start have been video games could be detrimental to children as it damagingly alters children's development in the future. Let me highlight that the opposition side has completely dismissed all the risks and the gravities we have proven to the House today. Their side has also been so offhanded in realizing the detrimentialities of video games could be and will bring the children to extend in every depth of child development, safety, and path to the future. The biggest disagreement we had of today's debate is when you say that children spending so much of time and there is a lack of parental control. You should know, my dear opponents, that usually children nowadays are so advanced that they will find their own way to download games, and they will think that thing more fun and more challenging because they feel boring if they to play games that is just contain educational thing. And then when you are also mentioned that the children do not need to understand the technology with the government take, do not agree about that. How the parent want to have or control their children if they don't understand what is the technology? So now, about the second point, which you mentioned that it leads to increased creativity and also their cognitive skills. When you're practicing on something, doesn't mean that it's only plays for 1 hour. It's not enough for them. And then you reply this by saying that's why we need a parental control. The thing is, the parents is also a human being. They need to work and for the family's necessity, as I mentioned in my script earlier. So now, let me highlight that the opposition side has completely dismissed our points, such as first, which is that video games will lead to addictions. Their dopamine level heightened due to the superficial sense of accomplishment they get from completing the task or mission with the game. With game developers increasing the in-app purchases feature, addictions that is similar to gambling is stimulated through the video games. So to strengthen our case further, we have proven to the House that video games can enable emotional suppressions. Spending more time into the entertainment as addictive as video games is an enabler into affecting their emotions, causing emotional disconnections as they tend to neglect some of the other aspects of the real life. So lastly, video games expose children to all negative influences. Ladies and gentlemen, games will give a lot of negative exposure to the children as behaviors such as sexual harassment, violence, and even pedophilia, which is prominent in the platform. Can you imagine children at the early age stages of their life are already being exposed to these all negative things? So in our world, we view games as posing too much of risk to the children that affects their development, leading to mental scarring and also trauma. The discourage of video games being detrimental have been discussed long enough due to the facts of our societies being unable to fully adapt towards its expansion. And it will keep on being discussed until parents are able to integrate video games healthily into their children's life. But we do not see this happening anytime soon. Thus, we urge the House to pass this motion and recognize this detrimentality of video games as it damagingly alters children's development in the future. With that, I end my speech.
Thank you to the government team. Well, that's all for our debate today. We would like to thank the honorable educators and debaters for your presence today. So the result for the debate competition will be announced shortly. So please wait a while. Okay, everyone, I have the results here with me. So the winning team for this debate is the government team. Padang Terap district. Congratulations. And the best speaker for this debate is Miss Nur Ain Najibah from Padang Terap district. Well done. Okay, everyone, you may leave the room and we wait for your round for next round. Well done. Thank you very much.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.